Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your attendance. I'm Mary Margaret Oliver, Chairman of the Martoc Committee, and we're here this afternoon for a discussion of the status of Marta's operations in this interesting time of COVID and all of the issues they're facing. I have prepared a couple of handouts for members of the committee. This is an unusual committee. It was created by statute. It is a joint House and Senate committee with specific appointments by the Speaker, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor. It is specific duties set out in statute, and I've given you a copy of it. It has a lot of interest, a fairly broad agenda, and it has been periodically a very active committee using its subpoena powers. Today, we're not about subpoenas. Today, we're about understanding where we are in this opportunities that Georgia is facing with significant federal infusion of money and with significant challenges. The other matter I put before y'all in just a little bit of history of the Martoc Committee is there was a slight adjustment on the requirements of Marta funding going to operations or capital outlays in around 2014. And at the same time, there was thinking there was probably a negotiation when Chairman Mike Jacobs was involved that would give this committee opportunity to participate in four-year interval audits. Under Chairman Silcox last December, the first 2020 audit was presented to the committee, and those of you that may have been on the committee last year may have remembered that. So this committee has an unusual creation from the beginning of the Marta Act in 1965 and has an unusual composition unique to other committees. And I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to be with you today. Jeff Parker is the general manager and CEO of Marta, has been with them since 2018 and has a 35-year professional career in transit. He may want to tell us that his last job was with a private engineering firm. And he previously was with Marta before he came as the general manager in 2018. We have an agenda that has been shared with y'all, and we're happy to hear from you at this time. Mr. Parker, thank you for your time and your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman and members of Martoc, and appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of you. And we embrace the uniqueness of Martoc and enjoy and appreciate the oversight and the conversations that we have with you and with the members of the committee and ultimately, the General Assembly, because I think that's a really important relationship. So thank you. I have been told not to touch the computer, so I'm just going to ask whomever is controlling it to bring it up to the agenda slide.
Slides. We have provided the slides for
I'm gonna
convenience.
Not follow the directions that I was given and do it myself, but maybe someone can.
There we are.
Yeah. So as the chairwoman had said, we have been provided the agenda, and we've put together a presentation to follow that very agenda, and I'm going to delve right into it. Most importantly, I think talking about the impacts and the opportunities with COVID, and we really wanted to start with a perspective around how we're funded and how the infusion of federal funds that we were able to get, the 3 infusions of federal funds from the federal government are being used. So a lot of information on the slide. I'm not going to go over it in details. We can answer questions, but we generally divide, although the 50-50 split of the sales tax has been lifted, we still generally are following that as a matter of practice. And we have infused funds from the federal government both into our operating program, which is where the majority of that funds are going, the CARES Act funds, as well as the ARP funds. And then a small portion of that have gone into our capital program, and we'll be talking a little bit about that later. But this sort of depicts where our sales tax, the core 1 cent, and we distinguish the core 1 cent because I think, as the members know, the city of Atlanta has added an additional ½ cent. So when I talk about the core penny, that's the 1 cent that goes back to the early 70s that we've been collecting. This is a depiction of kind of the slices of the pies where those funds go. The opportunity in front of us is caused by a substantial decline in ridership tied to COVID-19. As I think it's fair to say that public transportation has been affected and impacted like many private businesses and the roadways and all of the infrastructure and all that goes on in our economy. I think the difference is the uniqueness of how each of these sectors are going to recover is a little different, and that's what I really want to focus on. And so this is a depiction of our ridership, and you can see here the blue. So the blue is 2020, and just to kind of put a frame of reference, because I know it seems like this, how long has COVID-19 seems like an odd question that we've been living, but it's a difficult referendum to put on. So the blue, March of 2020, fiscal year 2020, which would have been calendar year 21, is when we first saw the impacts of COVID. And so that's where our ridership has declined. And you can see, following the blue to the yellow, which is the full year of the impact on COVID, to now the green September of fiscal year 2022 is where we have recovered to. So I think, generally speaking, we have had a significant, precipitous, quick drop in ridership, and we have had a very slow and steady recovery. This story is not unique to public transportation here in Atlanta. This is the exact same story that nearly every transit agency around the country is feeling. So there's really, in a big picture, it's we're following the trends of public transportation. To sort of quantify what we're seeing beyond kind of the monthly ridership, right? Because there's a lot of going on in the monthly ridership. But a couple of things that are going on inside here. One is that our rush hour is very different. We flatten our rush hour. We don't see that big peak anymore. And I think the conventional wisdom, I don't even want to say wisdom because I don't know how we predict this, but the conventional thought in transit is that our peak of the peak ridership is probably, I don't want to say never going to come back, but that will be the last thing that comes back. And really that's tied to commuting habits of largely people in the most dense parts of the city. For us, it's going to be Midtown and downtown. How reliably those office buildings fill up and empty out. When I worked in Boston, I used to have a view of South Station. And the financial district was a 7-minute walk from South Station. And at 5:07, you could look out my window and you would see human high tide headed to the public transportation. And so that, that phenomena is definitely lowered, and I don't think we're going to see a recovery around that. But where we have seen the largest recovery is on weekends with special events. People are using Marta to go to soccer games and football games and as conventions start to come up. So that sort of special event ridership is already back. And so we're seeing a larger increase on our weekend ridership. It's the future is a bit in question, but I think that the observation that I make and the opportunity that I have, and this is sort of something we've been talking a lot about in the public transit industry, is the way we built our systems is we're really trying to build capacity for that busiest 15 minutes or hour each day. That's going to be flattened. So I think what that will lead to is some level of more efficiency, right? If the ridership is spread out over a larger time, I think that in the long run, we can start to design our services. So that's sort of the future thought, designing our services with efficiency in mind, because we're not trying to create just simply build enough capacity to move people in that busiest hour every single week. The other challenge we have is not unique to Marta in terms of public transportation, and absolutely not unique to public transportation. We're seeing this in all sectors of our economy, and that is workforce challenges, trying to hire and retain individuals. And so this graph sort of shows where we are in terms of our employment focused on bus operators. Bus operators feed rail operators. So if we don't have enough bus operators, that affects rail operators. It's really core to our business. And so as the numbers, you can see the decline that we have. And I think this is, similar to you go into a restaurant and it seems 3/4 full and you still have to wait for a table because they simply don't have enough people working in the restaurant. We are moving to, beginning in December 18th, temporarily going to a Saturday bus schedule for almost all of our routes, about 12 routes that have recovered the quickest and that are carrying 75% or more of our pre-COVID-19 ridership. We will continue to provide the same level of service. And what we're doing here is what we need to provide to our customers, and what our customers really demand from us is reliability, right? The bus being there when you expect the bus to come. And what the shortage is happening is causing us to do right now is to cancel routes. And an unplanned cancel route makes someone not wait 15 minutes for the bus, but maybe 30 minutes for a bus. So by going to this Saturday service, we're going to have much more reliable service, and then continue an effort really to turn around, working with our union, and also really trying to increase the hiring of our bus operators so that we can get back to full service where we need to be. And so that, that's sort of the most tangible effects that we have today in terms of the impacts of COVID-19. We've got strong operating performance. We continue to have a balanced budget. Revenue in blue, expenses in yellow. You can see that we have created surpluses year over year. 2021 and 2020 are sort of extreme examples of that. I'll get into some of that later. Some of the impact is caused by the relief money that we got through the FTA. We have to draw down through the FTA through a grants process, and we are trying to draw that money down and access that money as quickly as possible. So we are, and the FTA is encouraging all transit agencies to do this, draw that money down and use funds that are appropriate to those programs. This is sort of an explanation of where we are in our longer term forecast, 20 and 21 actuals, and the CARES and the ARP funding are the two largest pieces of relief money that we received, and the two that are being used for operating funds. And so we have a strategy that our financial team is employing where we are drawing this down on appropriate funds. And you can see in 2022, this current fiscal year, we will have drawn down all of our CARES Act funding. And then through 2024, we will be drawing down all of our ARP funds. And if you go to the very bottom, this is the reserve account that we're building. So as you can see in these are the actuals of 2020 and 2021, we have created a surplus, and in 2022 we've built into a surplus. because what we will be doing is carrying over that funds into future years and using the sales tax, which doesn't have to be drawn down through this federal process, to make sure that we can continue to balance our budget for years to come. And so that's sort of an overview of where we are in terms of accessing the federal funds that have gone to the operating budget. In addition to that, a relatively small piece, and this was the second, the CRISA funds, we did allocate specifically for some capital programming that was allowed in the FTA guidelines that were set forth. And so we made sure that we use them to augment some important projects. One of them focusing on some of our station rehabilitation projects. So just drawing that money down into our capital program. And so talked a minute ago on the operating side, creating a reserve account. So I want to step the committee through where we are with our reserves. And to my left is a depiction of where we are over time and where we plan on being at the end of fiscal year 2022. And we've created a shading color here, and this is a very important point. So non-dedicated and dedicated reserves. The dedicated reserves are the money that we have through the agreements with the City of Atlanta and Clayton County, both the half-cent sales tax that the City of Atlanta is collecting. And when Clayton County joined the Marta jurisdictions, we made an agreement with them and said that we would set aside a certain amount of money for capital expansion projects. So we are in a period of time where we have not moved into construction of these projects. So we're collecting sales tax funds, the reserve account is growing, and we will begin to spend it down over the year. So the blue is, the salmon color is the dedicated funds and dedicated to our capital expansion in Clayton and Fulton County. The blue, which is the non-dedicated, is what we have. And we're largely looking at a plan as we develop our next year's capital program, is beginning to draw down some of these reserve accounts and move them into our capital program. We have the flexibility of doing that. We want to make sure that we are positioned to access match dollars as much as we can against the new federal transportation reauthorization program. And we believe now is the time to begin to draw that down. These numbers that you see in front of us are well in excess of the statutory numbers that are required under the Marta Act, well under what is, good business principles in terms of having several months of working of a reserve account that allows you several months of cash flow. So by no means I want anyone to take away from this conversation that we're looking to be, eating into the reserve accounts that we need to have for those unforeseen things that happen in the future. The pie on the right sort of shows the distribution of that. And as you can see currently, the 348 million in reserve account is what we will be, of the non-dedicated reserve account, is what we will be eating into. The 151, which is City of Atlanta's dedicated reserve account, and the 120, which is Clayton County's, will ultimately be spent to implement the projects that we have on our More Marta program. And then there's a very small reserve account that is largely a requirement of the railroads. In a variety of spots, we have an easement with the railroads, and we're required to have a reserve account in case there was some sort of catastrophic accident. It's part of the agreement that we have with the railroads that go back to the conception of Marta's rail system. Another area that we wanted to share and talk about and was requested to talk about is our transit-oriented development program. And I will take you through where we are. We have an ever-growing program. This slide is really meant depict sort of the richness of that program, a variety of partners that we work with, we worked with over the years. We have 17 ground leases. We're at about $6 million of ground lease revenue annually that supports our operating budget. We've got strong credit profiles with our ground lease tenants. So we've got that revenue is reliable. And the program has really focused on multifamily units with a successful attempt of building affordable housing units along the way. So this is where we are, but we have a whole lot of opportunities in front of us. Like, for example, we are nearing the conclusion of the construction of a 300-unit apartment complex at King Memorial. 100 of those units will be affordable housing units, and that will add to the portfolio of projects that we have. And as you can see, we have a lot of opportunities to grow that even more. And I'm going to take you through where we believe some of the best opportunities are over a number of years. So I like to tell the story of we see the success that has happened around many of our stations, and quite frankly, it's largely along the north part of our system, Midtown, Buckhead, Perimeter. We've seen a lot of development happen around those stations. And what we believe is that we have a great opportunity to unlock investment on the east-west line. And going to take you through a few examples of things that we're focused on, some that are off and running, and in particular, the support that the state has given us, and talk about some opportunities in the future. So Bankhead Station is I think a great shared success. There's we know it's an area that is underdeveloped, opportunities, lower income housing, and great rail system. We have recognized some time ago that there's value in making improvements. The Bankhead Station right now today only allows 2-car trains. We want to extend that platform. That will give us an opportunity to run longer trains. We'll be able to run better service in the core of the east-west line from Bankhead all the way over to Decatur. And we have a capital project to do that. We know that Microsoft is investing alongside our station. And we had an opportunity to get some $6 million in state funding from the Transit Trust Fund, the funds that come in from the Uber and Lyft fee. And so we're working closely with GDOT to finalize an agreement so we can transfer the funds that was allocated to this project in the state's budget last year. Another great opportunity that we have is
I'm going to interrupt you just
yes,
briefly.
please.
It might be worth a couple more, couple of minutes, 1 or 2 minutes on the Microsoft project. How much property have they acquired around? What's public about that economic development, and how much is the state's development deal completed in and around the Bankhead Station?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Jacob Vallow, who's been working. He's our head of our TOD and real estate program, to come up and talk about the details of the Microsoft side in terms of how much property they've acquired.
How much property, how many employees will be there?
Sure. So it's 90 acres they've acquired around the Bankhead Station. And they're hiring a master planner, I believe this month. And so we'll have more knowledge about what their plans are for the next 10 to 15 years. But there's a sizable campus, as well as a community development component of it, which includes mixed income housing as well. That's what we know, at least.
Thank you. I think it's an important piece of information about y'all's long-term development issues.
Yeah, and I think the important piece here is that a clear recognition around the value that Marta is bringing to a parcel of land that has gone, that particular parcel that they purchased has gone undeveloped for a number of years. So there's great opportunity with high quality transportation infrastructure, in this case, transit, to access. And as I've talked to the representatives from Microsoft, their thought process was simply knowing that their future employers, the residents of our state and the residents of the communities that Marta serves, are using public transportation, want to use public transportation, so they only wanted to find a location that was accessible from public transportation. We're going to get into this in another slide, but in 2026, a global picture of 5 points. But in 2026, the World Cup will be here. We see this as a important event that Marta would normally support in terms of ridership, but we also see an opportunity to leverage the property that we own around Mercedes-Benz Stadium to really work with the planners who are looking to make sure that we're attracting and delivering, high quality service around this major event that will be coming in 2026. And so key to that is 5 points. And just take a second to kind of back up and look at 5 points. So 5 points sort of generally in the middle of the station. And you can see Mercedes-Benz and State Farm. And if you think about 5 points to State Farm or Mercedes-Benz, it's not really today an easy walk to get there because we've got this big gulch in between, literally in between the two. But we know that significant investment is happening with Centennial Yards by CIM, the work that is being done in South Downtown by Newport, and that's the Newport development that's shaded below, redevelopment of 143 Alabama Street as well. Significant investment by the state through Georgia State. The property that the state owns is significant around here, as well as Fulton County. So we see this as a strategic opportunity to make major improvements to this station in support of the development that is happening. And we also truly believe that if we're not investing, trying to keep up with the private investment that's coming here, that ultimately we think that private investment will be slowed down. If they don't have high quality transit service, their ability to attract tenants to their development sites are going to be slowed down. So I want to take us through what we're doing. We have a major focus on rehabilitating all of our stations, but 5 points is a little more significant than the rest. We have a major rehabilitation of the station from the ground down, not including the ground, but the part of the station that's underground. I think it's fair to point out that we've got stations that are in some cases 40 years old and need to be refurbished. They're heavily used, they're worn, and we're spending a significant investment in our 1 cent sales tax, as well as some funds from the city of Atlanta through their half cent to rehabilitate the station. And these are just some depictions of what the station will be looking like in the future. But we also see that we really need to be transformative here. So we wanted to make sure that we hired a transformative design team to help us with this. And we have been successful in getting a company, SOM, Skidmore, Owens and Merrill, a national international firm, who have done some major transit improvement projects, from the ground up, as well as some rehabilitations. And this is just a great example of some of the work that they've done. The Brightline is a privately funded railroad in Miami. They were the designers of the terminal and an office complex that went above there. Monahan Train Hall, which was a former post office that sat above the tracks at Penn Station, has turned into a train passenger station. If you've ever been in the older Penn Station, it's really a confined area. So we think we've got a great partner in Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill to really transform what 5 Points is today to match the significant public investment private investment that's happening around our station. And so we will be working with them to really focus on not only below, but also focus on what is the surface going to look like. And what we intend on doing is, first phase is really taking those 2 blocks that are our station. They are kind of brutalist architecture, concrete, real, brutalist architecture, and softening that, turning it into a open area that we can use in support of particularly the World Cup that will be here in 2026. So we're working to having phase 1 done in 26, and we can have some programming at and around 5 Point Station. But ultimately, what that will set us up to do is to deliver on phase 2, which will be the longer play and the longer vision of a significant TOD at the station. We haven't gone through the concept of what that TOD will be. Will it be office complex, affordable housing, retail? That's what we need to do in the future. And clearly, it needs to be supportive and fit into the ever-evolving investments that are being made, particularly by CIM and Newport around the station. So I think this is, when I think about some of the most transformative things that are going to happen in Atlanta, it's what's happening downtown. And this is intended to keep up with that public, making sure that the public is keeping up with the private support that's going on around our station. Another great opportunity that we have in front of us at the far east side of our east-west line is at Kensington Station. We're a significant property owner there. You can see the property that we own in yellow. Significant amount of development sort of happening around the station. We're currently working with the Housing Authority of DeKalb County with a senior and workforce housing development, some other projects going on, and we ultimately see in the long run, a major development on the property that we own within Kensington Station. And part of the attraction is not just the access that we have to the rest of Atlanta and DeKalb County through the Marta system, but 285 just a stone throw away, and being able to access 285 is another great piece of infrastructure that we know will attract a development on this parcel. And then a future opportunity teamed with GDOT and the state as GDOT looks towards building out their managed lane program. One of their projects is the managed lanes along 285. We're working closely with the ATL, with Cobb County, with Gwinnett County, and Fulton County to vision what transit would look like on that 285 managed lane system, similar to what we're doing with Fulton County up 400. And we see that the access that the managed lanes, along with the access that we already have with the rail system, will also provide a great opportunity for development around Indian Creek Station. And so one of the things that we've already started, and I think just a few days from now, we will begin to do a small rehabilitation at Indian Creek Station. It's one of the first stations that we're rehabilitating as I said earlier, over the next sort of 7 years, we will be rehabilitating all of our stations. And finally, I want to bring you through a federal update. The Jobs Act, or IIJA, is another way it's called, has passed. The president signed it into law earlier this week. There is a substantial investment in public transportation The overall program, I think, increases by well over 40%. When you look at how the first benefit that a region like Atlanta would get would be through the formula funds. We will see a 30% increase in formula funds, a major increase in the availability of funds for discretionary programs. And there is one very large discretionary program that is the CIG, the Capital Investment Grant Program. And that is what transit agencies use to build expansions, and that has about doubled. And then within the CIG program, there are two programs, the Small Starts and New Starts. The Small Starts is for smaller projects. That eligibility has moved from 300 to 400 million, with an increase of from 100 million to 150 million of federal share. And the reason why that's so important to our region is that we have a variety of projects that are sort of hovering around that 300 million mark. And the Small Starts program is a quicker, simpler, less complex program that can allow us to move projects faster. So, for example, the BRT in Clayton County will be a Small Starts program. We've put the FTA on notice that we are getting ready to enter into the Small Starts program and begin to start to environmentally clear that program. So we're really excited about this, because the reality of it is that the half-cent sales tax that the city of Atlanta has pulled together to fund expansion, and the money that is dedicated out of the entry of Clayton County into the Marta jurisdictions, we're only going to be successful in delivering those projects if we have federal dollars to match our local dollars. So we're well positioned now to advance these projects. This is just a summary of sort of where the programs have gone. Not only programs that are impacting transit, but all of the discretionary programs that fall under Secretary Buttigieg, who has been here a few times and very focused on transit. And so just a major investment and expansion of the programs. For the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, not substantial changes in the design of the program, but a significant increase in the number of dollars available to us.
Mr. Parker.
Yes.
I'm following what you're saying, but I want to be clear in my own mind. This additional federal support implies additional state match in what ways? And that I see a state match number here at the bottom, and I'm trying to put it together.
Well, let's talk about the CIG program, the Capital Improvement Grant Program, which funds the two programs that are of most benefit and interest to this region are Small Starts and New Starts. So the federal government allocates an amount of money to be competed for by transit agencies all over the country. And so historically, and if we go back to when Marta was built, we were at an 80-20 share. And that has been sort of over time coming down, and in recent history, transit projects have been funded at probably 50% or lower. We believe that the FTA administration is going to have a willingness, probably not to get up to the 80%, but that 50% is going to be on the low end, and that we should be thinking about for new starts, and those are going to be our largest projects, 60-65%. But a larger share of money that the federal government has allocated against us. And then all of these projects are competitive. So we're competing against Austin, Texas, got a huge program, Seattle and New York and Los Angeles, and the list goes on and on. But I'm going to say it again, a larger pool of money. So when you're competing against a smaller pool of money, we're going to, everyone is, going to be, on average less successful. And then the other piece of it is the way to deal with that is that the FTA is going to just spread those projects over more time. So we think that while we have confidence that we've got great projects that we're advancing now and that they will be successful because of that larger funding, that's not going to be the restriction that slows us down in terms of developing the projects. We have a list of projects that are funded through the half-cent sales tax that are within Clayton County that we will be advancing. And so, but there are a whole lot of other needs around this region. And if I'm just going to think about Marta, DeKalb County has put together a transit master plan and has billions of dollars of needs for transit improvements. And we need a local match to access the federal funds. Fulton County also has a transit plan and is not, we don't have the local match to access those projects. So we should all be thinking about that the projects that we have local match for, we should be more successful faster because of the larger program. And I think it's also important for us to be thinking about creating the opportunities in those jurisdictions that do not have the local match to advance projects.
This might be a good time to stop and see if
Yeah.
any of the members would like to ask some questions at this time. And okay, Mr. Representative Monahan, that'd be 23.
If there are no other questions.
So please go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Parker, for
You're
coming
welcome.
out today and giving us this wonderful update. I really do appreciate your time, and I know that it's a big undertaking to get this kind of information out to us, to this committee. Mr. Parker, I did have some time. I wanted to, and thank you, Madam Chair, for some time for me to ask these questions. If you've got just a moment, I'd like to ask some of you.
Yes, please.
Is that okay?
Yes.
You're the current CEO of Marta. I think we've pretty well covered that. Tell me what being the CEO means to you. Being the CEO of Marta, a large transportation network, in our major city, in our biggest city.
Yeah, I've been for the most part in public transportation most of my life. I, a variety of leadership positions. I've actually been a DOT commissioner in another state in an earlier part of my career. So it's a leadership position. We have we live in a great region. The jurisdictions that we serve, that Marta serves, have significant challenges in front of us around growth. And so, ultimately, the leadership position that I have running this organization is twofold. One is that we need to build confidence of the people who ride our system, the elected officials like all of you who are sitting in front of me, and the jurisdictions that we serve, the local elected officials, that they have the confidence in Marta as a public entity. But my leadership position is also one that we need to be able to deliver on projects that we have in front of us, and also help to shape a path forward that's going to ultimately support the growth that we see in front of us, the inequities that are sort of built all around us in terms of previous investment, and making sure that we're looking towards efforts that help to support and eat away into those inequities that we see around us. So for me personally, it's a great opportunity to have what I believe is an important effect on, a part of this country. And, I moved here in 2005 and have, settled here, raised my children here. And I think I've got a wonderfully impactful position in making this a better place for the people who live here, including
I
myself.
agree. Who appoints you to be or hires you to be the CEO of Marta?
The Marta board hires the CEO. So I'm the one position that the Marta board hires is the CEO.
Okay, and can you describe to us who they are?
The Marta board is appointed by one appointee by the governor. And then the jurisdictions each have several members that appoint the.
What are those jurisdictions?
DeKalb, Fulton County, Clayton County, and the city of Atlanta.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so it's a lofty position. It is.
I didn't quite hear what you said. I'm
It's
sorry.
quite the lofty position. I was going to say the COP is good, and I congratulate you on that. I'm not going to say that. I don't know how public we want to make that, but I will say that's good. But you had some previous experience at Marta, correct?
Yes, I did.
What was your previous experience?
Previously, I was the senior director of operations at Marta.
Okay, so like a director of operations, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
in
What were you-
effect, over the operations of Marta.
In short, what were your duties?
I had several thousand people who reported up to me that operated the trains and the buses, and there was a period of time that the maintenance of the system also was my responsibility.
Does that maintenance include facilities?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I read some of your background. It seems you've been a pioneer in your field, expanding systems, I believe, in Boston. Is that correct?
I worked in Boston for a number of years. Yeah, that's where I started my career in public transportation.
Okay. And I think by your bio, you're someone who specializes in that system expansion, would you say?
You know, I mean, it's something that I enjoy doing. I've got a lot of experience with that, and you know, I don't know that it's a specialty of mine, but it's something that I'm clearly focused on.
Would you say it's your focus to make the system better? It is.
So we have. Let me back up a second. I've worked at several large public entities, the transit system in Boston, the DOT at the state of Connecticut, and Marta. And large public entities sometimes become so inwardly focused. They think about what's important for them. And so at the heart of what I want to do at Marta, and I think this is critically important, is to get the organization to be more focused externally on its customers, customer facing. And so that everything that we do, we need to think about and interact with our customers to understand how it's going to benefit them.
Okay. What would you say the demographics of your ridership are?
We have, I think I'm not going to throw out percentages because I would get them wrong off the top of my head, but we have the demographics are very consistent with the communities that we serve.
Sure, it's an urban system.
It's an urban city, but we have, poorer parts of the communities that we serve, where we have riders who desperately needed and continue to use our system during the pandemic. And we have highly paid, users who have fallen off because the big office buildings that they work in Midtown aren't being used right now.
Sure.
So we've got a pretty wide range of demographics.
Would you say that you serve a large minority population?
Yeah, consistent with the population of the area we serve.
There is a point to here. Madam Chair, I'll get there. I know you're growing impatient. Don't grow impatient with me. I'll get there this moment. Tell me in 3 words, if you had a mission statement for Marta, what is it?
Our mission is to be a customer-centric organization. And we also have a desperate need to expand and improve transit through projects. So I like to talk about this in terms of delivering our capital program with speed and efficiency.
Okay. When was the last time you rode Marta?
yesterday.
Was that a bus or a train?
Yesterday, it was a train.
Okay.
But I don't, my wife and I own a single car, and which means she drives the car all the time. And my usual commute in is on the 21 bus, get off here at 5 Points and ride that up to our offices at Lindbergh.
Okay. I've got Mr. Speck, Justin Speck, that's in the media office. Can we start with the first picture? I assure you, none of them are of you. That's just, we're getting over to it. Let's see. So I did a spot inspection of a few of the stations, knowing that this meeting was coming up. This is a gentleman who's homeless here, and you know, homeless populations it's a large veteran population.
Yep.
There was nobody attending to this station. This is actually right outside the Capitol.
Yeah, it looks like Georgia State Station.
Yeah, Georgia State Station right here. Yeah. And there was actually people this was totally unguarded, unstaffed. People were just jumping the turnstiles, squeezing their way through. But this gentleman had no help. Let's go to the next picture. This right here is a picture of the tracks. Ms. Parker, I mean, if I could ask you this in short, the place was filthy. And I think we can zoom in on that picture, or we can go to the next one, doesn't matter. But there's trash everywhere. There it is. I mean, there's liquor bottles, there's trash. Next picture. This is the Bankhead Station. This is outside of the other trash that was everywhere. This one is a crumbling structural post. I know you want to do improvements to it. I'll be honest, by the time I got to Bankhead, I felt pretty unsafe. Let's go to the next picture. This is some urine that's in the corner. Looks like it's pretty well congealed and stained into the corner. Let's go to the next picture. This is a seemingly drug needle that was left on the ground at one of the stations. Let's go to the next picture. This is more trash.
Mr. Monahan, I'm sure you're working towards asking him what he's going to do about this.
I just want to show the exhibits, and then we'll get to the next. I got just a few more. Next picture. Again, we got more. And next. This is again another needle. Next. There's some food items. There's more stuff. This stuff has not been moved in what looks to be years. It's congealed. It's caked onto the stations. Next.
And your question is, sir?
Well, I need to get to. Once you see all of them, it'll make more sense. Next, let's keep going through. Madam Chair, I will get through these. This is the elevator. This is some congealed urine and other matter. This is the escalator. This is where presumably children are getting onto this. We saw several children that day. Masks, trash, continue. I think that may be the last picture there, if it is. If it is, don't move. Thank you very much. Ms. Parker, with all this being said, we've talked today about future expansion, and we've talked today about all these kind of goals that you have. I grew up in a home pretty well in poverty, but I can tell you one thing, we didn't have much, but it was clean. So my question to you is, I hated to even see this. I hated to be out there and see all that. Why is Marta so filthy?
Well, you know, Marta is a big system, and we spend a significant effort in working to maintain the system. And so let me first back up to the first slide you showed, and that was the gentleman who was laying down, and I'm going to make the assumption, although I don't know, I'm going to make an assumption that he may have been homeless.
I believe it was.
And so what are we doing to make sure that our system in a big urban environment is well maintained, is clean, is safe, and that the people who live in this region and live in the state of Georgia who don't have enough resources to have homes and don't have opportunities are treated with respect.
Correct.
And so it's important for our agency to focus on that. So one, homelessness, huge problem in Metro Atlanta, but a huge problem all around this country. We have stepped up, worked with an organization called Hope Atlanta and our police department, and created a protective specialist position, which is a non-sworn police officer, to work directly with social workers so that we are trying our best to find the resources so that an individual like that doesn't have to sleep either on a MARTA station or on the curb outside of a MARTA station or under an underpass on one of our bridges in this city. So we've got an extreme focus that's humane and respectful, but unfortunately, the resources that are available to the people who live in this community aren't enough to make sure that we can deal with it. But we've got a proactive group of people, and we're actually working to expand that program to make sure that we are finding and offering access to those individuals. Cleanliness. My focus around cleanliness is clearly around having enough resources, which I believe we do.
I think I looked through your budget here, and there was well over $3 million spent on cleaning services. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, we spend, I don't know off the top of my head what was in there, but we spend a major investment with both internal staff and external staff.
I noticed that just the contract services that you have are over $3 million.
Okay.
And there's several pages of folks that are working facility cleaning around about $35,000 a year in that position.
And so what we're doing is we have created a station management, station ownership program so that we have specific clarity around people who have ownership of those stations are empowered to clean up the things that you've seen.
When was that? When was that program?
Mr.
put in place?
Monahan,
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to get it. Would you like him to answer?
Oh, I just want to know when it, okay, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I'll listen.
No, that's all right. Do you have any other questions?
I just want to know when that was implemented that way.
We have been, it has been implemented over the past several months, and it's an evolving process that we're looking to fine tune. You know, I can specifically speak to, like, you know, some of the images and they are, we no doubt need to improve. Some of the flooring that you took pictures of, we hired and specifically, we spent a lot of resources over the past year during COVID-19 to really invest in improving the cleanliness of our station. So I think you showed a couple pictures that showed, I suspect urine staining, but it is, corners that, quite frankly, we need to replace the flooring that are stained. And that it's not that we haven't powered washed them. It's not that we haven't attended to them. If you look at our trackways, we've invested in a vacuum truck that we can, not a truck, but a vacuum that we can access on the platform, because we're always trying to balance the state of good repair work for our tracks, for our signal system, with allowing cleaners to safely access the track, to be able to go and remove all that debris that you see that gets blown in there, and remove that. Do we need to do a better job? Absolutely. Are we focused on that? Absolutely.
I'll just,
You have one or two more, Mr. Monahan?
I do. Yes, Madam Chair. So I think I just have to ask, and look, I've been a director before as well, and certainly not in that kind of position. And I understand you've got a background in Marta, which is why this is extremely important to me that we have this taken care of. I'm a second generation American, and I consider myself to be a minority, and we serve minority communities. What we saw on this monitor earlier, the pictures that I took, does not seem to reflect a value set that respects folks who are on this train. The single mothers, the groups who commonly use these services. In fact, I was on the train yesterday, and a man comes up to me and he says, "Sir, are you here to fix this?" I said, "Well, tell me what you mean." He says, "We deserve better. We deserve better than this." I said, "Sir, I agree with you. I'm going to do everything I can to make this better." And so as we're talking about capital improvement projects, and we're talking about all these things, I don't know how wise a decision it would be to spend millions upon millions of dollars in capital improvements if we can't keep the tracks clean.
Thank you,
That's the reason, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Monahan.
If I may, just one more question.
One more.
Okay, let me pick out of these. I want to ask. With the level filth that we saw in these pictures, that really upset me when I saw it. I really wish when I went down there, I would never see it. If the headquarters of Marta looked like that, would you fire somebody? If inside the hallways of headquarters.
I mean, I'm not going to get into whether I'd fire someone. I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that we need to and continue to focus on creating an environment for our customers that attracts people to our system. And, I appreciate the pictures that you've shown, and there are examples of that around our system, but we've got a workforce and we've got a management team that is focused on being customer-centric and making sure that we minimize and remove all of those things that you've shown, and we're working hard to do that.
Thank you. Senator Dixon, do you have any questions you'd like to ask? Chairman Perkle, happy to have you with us. Do you have anything you'd like to follow up with?
No, I just need to digest this one.
Why don't you come to our microphone? I know you know Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a lot of data, and I really need to digest it and talk. Yes, ma'am. There was a lot of stuff, and I wouldn't do anybody any justice right now. But I do thank you for the opportunity.
Ms. Davis or Ms. Scott, do either of y'all have a question you'd like to ask? And you need to come to a microphone, and then the table would be fine.
I guess if you had to ask
A question.
As far as questions here, I've had people contact me about the 70+ routes that were stopped initially, but I know that after a year they were restarted. Of the routes that were restarted, okay, you're saying that you're going to cut back on some of the routes because of manpower. Is there some way we can get a list of what those routes are? Because a number of people had problems getting to their jobs when the routes were stopped, and now you started them back, now you're cutting back. So we need to know which routes are you going to keep at full service and which routes are you cutting back, so that we can assess if those routes are really vital routes. Mm-hmm. Because you cutting back on some of these routes is cutting back on people's ability to feed their families and pay their rent. That is something that we really need to look at, the we need to know what effect is this going to have on those communities that actually depend on these services.
Mr. Parker, you want to answer that?
Yeah, let me put a couple of things into context. So at the relatively early on during COVID-19, while we were all trying to figure out what was in front of us, we made a difficult decision, and Representative Davis mentioned this, to cut routes. Because what the CDC was telling us at the time was we needed to make sure that our buses were not overcrowded. And that was cutting the routes is what we had to do. It was a difficult decision. We have restored all those routes. Now we're faced with a challenge around resources and not having enough men and women to drive our buses. So what we have today is routes that have unpredictable points where we are dropping a trip, and so that people are waiting for longer than they would plan on.
How
So-
are you publicly telling the public about this?
So
Yeah.
we have a public campaign. We will have information at all of our bus stops, all of our rail stations, getting that word out, sharing the schedules, which are the Saturday schedules for the routes that we're moving back to a Saturday schedule. But I think, we need to recognize that in this case, we are not leaving anyone behind. Every single route will still be in service. The routes that have rebounded the strongest since COVID-19, we will continue to run weekday service, and that's, I believe, 12 routes, and the rest of them will be running Saturday schedules. So bus service will be available starting in December in all of the places that we serve today, although less frequent.
Ms. Scott, before we ask Mr. Parker to conclude, is there any question you'd like to ask him? You want to come to the table, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Representative Scott, and I'm from Clayton County. And I heard you talk about Clayton County throughout your program. But one thing that I'm concerned with Clayton County is the shelters and the seats and the benches that have never been put at the bus stops in Clayton County. And I'm just trying to see, where are you all with that? And when will they be installed throughout Clayton County? Because it was something that was promised to us, and we still have not yet received them at all of the locations.
Yeah, we have a program where we have committed to installing 1,000 bus amenities, mostly shelters, some benches, over a 5-year period. So it's about 200 a year. It's well underway. We've installed, I believe, and I'll get you the actual numbers, and actually we'll get you the locations of where they have all been installed. But we've installed, I think, in excess of or close to 100 amenities, bus amenities in Clayton County. We built phase 1 of the Justice Center transfer station that was opened just around the beginning of COVID-19. So we're well underway in continuing the effort to install shelters in Clayton County like the rest of the jurisdictions. And we have an internal policy where we have every bus stop doesn't have enough passengers to warrant a shelter. And so we have a number of riders that we would want to have at a particular stop, or if there is some lifeline facilities like a hospital, like a senior complex, or a school, we would install a shelter as well.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Is there anything else you'd like to add to close with us today?
I just would like to thank my staff, but in particular point out Chairwoman Rita Scott, the board chair, who came today, and appreciate her support and all the support of the board. and several members of my staff who are here. So I appreciate you inviting us. It's a great conversation. And, the only thing I'd like to close with is, we see great opportunities to improve our system. The state has allocated funds to a transit trust fund. And, I think there will be some great opportunities in the future to use some of those funds to refresh our stations in order to support, I think some of the things that the representative pointed out around concerns around how we need to improve our station is, one of the things that we need to focus on, and we'll continue to work with the state on that.
Thank you for your time. Please help keep all our riders safe. And we are adjourned. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everything you do. Thanks.